The breach. Sarah Chen never expected to make history as the first human to successfully breach Station Nexus 99 security systems. Then again, she never expected to be desperate enough to try. As she adjusted the worn maintenance coveralls stolen from the supply depot on Outpost 7, she couldn't help but smile at the absurdity of her situation. Here she was, walking, not floating like the station's alien inhabitants preferred, through one of the most secure facilities in the Galactic Alliance, all because of coffee. Real, honest-to-goodness, Earth-grown coffee. The station's blue-tinted corridors stretched before her, their gentle luminescence a stark contrast to the harsh red warning lights that would soon be flashing. Sarah whistled an old Earth tune, "Don't worry, be happy," partly to calm her nerves and partly because she knew it would drive the station's security systems crazy. Their acoustic sensors were calibrated for the subsonic communications preferred by most alien species, not the peculiar vibrations humans called music. "You know," she muttered to herself, "this would be a lot easier if they'd just answered my trade application like normal people." But that was the problem with the Centaurian bureaucracy running Nexus 99, they didn't consider humans normal people. The first security barrier materialized before her, a shimmering curtain of energy that would have impressed her more if she hadn't spent the last 5 years maintaining similar systems on the frontier colonies. Sarah pulled out her trusty wrench, an antique tool she'd inherited from her grandfather, and gave the field emitters housing a precise tap. The barrier dissolved like morning mist. "Amateur hour," she chuckled, continuing her casual stroll through the restricted sector. The second barrier appeared almost immediately, this one with the distinctive purple tinge of a triple redundant field. Sarah didn't even break stride as she walked through it, her specialized maintenance coveralls fabric disrupting the energy field's coherence just enough to render it harmless. The aliens never did understand why humans insisted on wearing clothes rather than the force field suits preferred by most species. The third barrier proved slightly more challenging, phase shift technology, top of the line. Sarah paused, pulling out a ration bar from her pocket. She'd learned long ago that the best way to avoid suspicion was to act like you belonged exactly where you were. Nothing said, "authorized personnel," quite like taking a snack break in the middle of a high-security area. As she munched on the tasteless protein bar, Sarah examined the barrier's power coupling. The phase shift tech was impressive, but like most advanced alien technology, it had a critical weakness: over-engineering. They always assumed that any security breach would involve equally advanced countermeasures. The simple electromagnetic pulse generator she pulled from her pocket, standard equipment for restarting finicky computer terminals, was about as advanced as a hammer. The barrier transformed into a shower of sparks that reminded her of New Year's sparklers. Sarah waved at the nearest security camera, knowing it would drive the security chief crazy. She'd studied the station's personnel files thoroughly before attempting this infiltration, and Chief Craw Vox's psych profile suggested he was already having a very bad day. Making her way toward the quantum research labs, Sarah reflected on the series of events that had led her to this point. 6 months ago, she'd been a respected maintenance engineer on Europa Colony, keeping the human settlement's life support systems running smoothly. Then the coffee supply lines had been cut by the Proximan trade embargo, and the colony's hydroponic gardens had failed to produce viable coffee plants for the third cycle in a row. The colonists had grown desperate. Synthetic coffee substitutes only made things worse. They might fool alien taste buds, but any human could tell the difference. When word reached Europa that Station Nexus 99 had started importing genuine Earth coffee for its senior staff, Sarah had volunteered for what she'd dubbed Operation Bean Counter. She spotted the maintenance shaft ahead, a standard access tube that ran through the station's service areas. The aliens preferred to use transport tubes or personal gravity drives to move between levels, making the maintenance shafts perfect for human infiltrators. As she approached the shaft's entrance, she heard the distinctive whine of gravity boots behind her. "Perfect timing," Sarah muttered, sliding into the shaft just as a security team rounded the corner. The shaft's low gravity made descent easy, another advantage of human physiology. While most species found Earth-like gravity uncomfortable or even dangerous, humans had evolved to thrive in it. The cafeteria level beckoned below, and with it, her target, Admiral Pextor's private coffee supply. The security forces were closing in, but Sarah wasn't worried. She'd studied their containment protocols thoroughly, and none of them accounted for human ingenuity, or desperation. Landing in the main dining area, Sarah easily avoided the neural nets the security team deployed. Years of zero-G maintenance work had given her an instinctive understanding of movement in variable gravity environments. She even managed to catch one of the nets and use it to tangle up 3 officers, their gravity boots making them easy targets. The scent hit her then, rich, dark, and absolutely authentic. Real coffee. Sarah's mouth watered as she approached the beverage dispensary, ignoring Chief Vox's increasingly desperate commands. The genetic lock on the machine posed no challenge. Maintenance overrides were standardized across the station, a fact that the security team had apparently overlooked. As she savored her first sip of Colombian dark roast, Sarah almost felt sorry for the security chief. Almost. His mention of Kopi Luwak in the high-security storage room was an obvious trap, but it piqued her interest nonetheless. The infamous cat-processed coffee beans were a delicacy even on Earth, and finding them here, in deep space. Well, she'd come this far. Why not see how deep this rabbit hole went? Sarah took another sip of her coffee and smiled at Chief Vox. Lead the way, Chief. But first, anyone else want a cup? It really is excellent coffee. The security team's tentacles twitched in unified confusion as their human quarry casually offered to share their admiral's prized coffee. It was going to be an interesting day on Station Nexus 99. The conspiracy. Chief Craw Vox's trap wasn't particularly subtle, but Sarah Chen had to admire the psychology behind it. The promise of rare coffee would indeed have been irresistible to most humans. As she followed the security team toward the high-security storage room, she noticed something that made her pause. The ventilation patterns were all wrong. You know, she said, taking another sip from her commandeered cup of Colombian dark roast, for a storage room supposedly containing expensive Earth commodities, there's a remarkable lack of climate control in this section. Chief Vox's upper tentacles twitched, a tell she'd learned to recognize as surprise in Centaurians. The climate control systems are classified, he managed to say. Classified climate control. Now that's interesting. Sarah studied the walls with renewed attention. Especially since every other storage section handling Earth goods has visible humidity monitors. Almost like this isn't really a storage area at all. Before Vox could respond, a new alarm blared through the station, different from the security alerts triggered by her presence. This one had a deeper, more urgent tone that made even the seasoned security officer's tentacles curl in anxiety. Sir. Officer Zakram's voice crackled over the comm, we have unauthorized access in the quantum communications hub. Someone's broadcasting on the restricted channels. Sarah watched as Chief Vox's skin shifted from its normal purple to a pale lavender, the Centaurian equivalent of going white with shock. Impossible, he whispered. The quantum channels are hardened against. He stopped, staring at Sarah with all 3 of his eyes. This was a distraction. Took you long enough, Sarah said cheerfully. Though in fairness, I really did come for the coffee first. The quantum channel hack was just a happy coincidence. Well, coincidence might be the wrong word. The pieces were falling into place now. The irregular coffee shipments, the heavily guarded storage areas, the quantum communication channels that were supposedly only used for diplomatic traffic. Sarah had suspected something was off when she'd first hacked into the station's cargo manifests, but this was bigger than even she had imagined. You're working with someone, Vox said. It wasn't a question. Let's just say I'm not the only one interested in Station Nexus 99's coffee import business. Sarah finished her coffee and carefully set the cup down. Did you really think no one would notice that the station was importing 10 times more coffee than its registered personnel could possibly consume? The security chief's tentacles went rigid, a sign of extreme stress in Centaurians. You don't understand what you're involving yourself in, human. Actually, I think I do. Sarah's smile faded. The coffee shipments are a cover, aren't they? Something's being smuggled in with them, something that needs quantum-level encryption to hide its tracks. The question is, what's so valuable that it's worth compromising a high-security alliance station? A new voice joined the conversation, smooth, cultured, and decidedly not Centaurian. Perhaps I can answer that question. Sarah turned to see a tall, elegantly dressed figure step out of a previously hidden doorway. His species was one she'd never encountered before, crystalline structures instead of flesh, refracting light in complex patterns that seemed to shift with his movements. Ambassador Lysrix, Chief Vox said, his voice a mixture of respect and fear. This is a security matter. I assure you we have it under control. Do you? The crystalline being's voice held a note of amusement. Because from where I stand, your human intruder has not only breached your supposedly impenetrable security but has also deduced the existence of our special arrangement. Sarah's mind raced. Ambassador Lysrix, she knew that name. The crystalline beings were called the Lumini, a highly advanced species that rarely involved themselves in alliance affairs. Their presence on a frontier station like Nexus 99 had raised eyebrows in diplomatic circles, but no one had been able to prove anything suspicious. The coffee isn't just coffee, Sarah said, meeting the ambassador's shifting gaze. It's a carrier medium, isn't it? Something in the beans themselves. Very good. Lysrix's crystalline form sparkled with what might have been appreciation. You see, Chief Vox. This is why we should have recruited humans for this operation from the start. They have such wonderful pattern recognition skills. Recruited? Sarah raised an eyebrow. Is that what we're calling it now? My dear Ms. Chen, yes, I know who you are. What would you say if I told you that your little coffee heist has accidentally uncovered one of the most important scientific endeavors in Alliance history? Before Sarah could respond, another alarm joined the cacophony already filling the station. This one was different, a deep, resonating tone that seemed to vibrate through the very structure of the station. The ambassador's crystalline form dimmed slightly. Ah. It seems our conversation will have to wait. The containment field in Laboratory 7 is failing. The quantum containment field? Chief Vox's voice rose in panic. But that's impossible unless, he turned to Sarah with dawning horror. Unless someone used the quantum communications array to transmit a destabilizing frequency. Like I said, Sarah shrugged, I didn't come alone. As if on cue, the station's lights flickered, and gravity shifted momentarily. In the distance, something made a sound like reality itself was tearing. Well, Sarah said brightly, this just got a lot more interesting than coffee smuggling, didn't it? Unexpected allies. The quantum containment breach in Laboratory 7 turned out to be the least of Station Nexus 99's problems. As Sarah Chen raced through the corridors alongside Chief Vox and Ambassador Lysrix, an alliance she wouldn't have believed possible an hour ago, she realized that her seemingly simple coffee heist had triggered a cascade of events that threatened to tear the station apart. Your accomplices, Lysrix's crystalline voice rang with unexpected urgency, they don't understand what they're tampering with. The quantum resonance patterns in Laboratory 7 are tied directly to the station's core systems. They're not my accomplices, Sarah corrected, ducking under a malfunctioning pressure door. More like, competing interested parties. I really did come for the coffee. The Europa colony is desperate. The Europa colony? Chief Vox's tentacles writhed in what Sarah now recognized as his equivalent of a thoughtful frown. But the embargo shouldn't have affected their supply lines. Unless someone deliberately diverted their shipments, a new voice finished. From a side corridor emerged a figure that made even Ambassador Lysrix's crystalline form dim in surprise, a Proximan trade delegate, their biomechanical exoskeleton gleaming under the emergency lights. Delegate ZYX for 27, Lysrix said coldly. I should have known your people would be involved in this, interference. The Proximan's external sensors pulsed with blue light, their version of laughter. Involved? We've been investigating your operation for months. The coffee trade embargo was simply our way of forcing your hand. Sarah looked between the two aliens, pieces clicking into place in her mind. You used our coffee addiction as a pressure point. Cut off the supply to human colonies, knowing we'd eventually trace the remaining shipments back here. Humans are wonderfully predictable when it comes to their stimulants, ZYX for 27 agreed. Though I must admit, we expected corporate espionage, not a single maintenance engineer with a gift for improvisational infiltration. Speaking of infiltration, Chief Vox cut in, his security training reasserting itself, who exactly is destabilizing my quantum containment fields? The answer came in the form of a massive explosion from somewhere below them. The deck plating shuddered, and the station's artificial gravity fluctuated wildly. Sarah instinctively grabbed a wall handle, while her alien companions activated various forms of personal gravity control. That would be the Shade Collective, another voice announced. From the shadows stepped a figure that seemed to be made of living darkness, a member of the mysterious species known as the Umbrans. And before you ask, no, we're not working with the Proximans. We have our own interests in the ambassador's research. Sarah felt a headache building behind her eyes. So let me get this straight, the Lumini are using coffee imports to smuggle something into the station, the Proximans engineered a coffee shortage to investigate them, and the Umbrans are trying to steal whatever's being smuggled? A crude but essentially accurate summary, the Umbran said, its voice like whispered silk. Though you left out the part where the station security chief has been quietly investigating all of us. All eyes turned to Chief Vox, whose tentacles had gone completely still, a sign of either extreme focus or terminal embarrassment in Centaurians. I may have been running my own operation, he admitted. After the third time our coffee shipments triggered quantum anomalies in the cargo bay, I began to suspect something more was happening than simple smuggling. The coffee beans, Sarah said suddenly, remembering something from her engineering studies. They're being used as quantum pattern carriers, aren't they? Organic molecules can maintain quantum entanglement states longer than artificial structures. That's why it had to be real coffee, synthetic wouldn't work. Ambassador Lysrix's crystalline form pulsed with what might have been approval. Very good, Ms. Chen. We're using the molecular structure of coffee beans to store and transport quantum-entangled information. Information that could revolutionize interstellar communication, or, in the wrong hands, tear reality apart at the seams. Another explosion rocked the station, closer this time. Emergency sirens blared, and the station's AI announced in multiple languages that critical systems were approaching failure. Which is exactly what's about to happen, Chief Vox said grimly. The Shade Collective's attack on the containment field has started a quantum cascade. In approximately 20 minutes, every quantum-entangled coffee bean on this station is going to create its own microscopic reality breach. Well, Sarah said, pulling her maintenance tool kit from her coveralls, I didn't come all this way to watch a station full of perfectly good coffee tear itself apart. I suggest we all start working together, or none of us will be around to argue about who gets the credit for this quantum coffee breakthrough. The assembled aliens, Lumini, Proximan, Umbran, and Centaurian, stared at her in varying expressions of surprise and skepticism. And why exactly should we trust you? The Umbran asked. Sarah grinned, pulling out her trusty wrench. Because I'm probably the only person on this station who's ever had to restart a quantum field generator with nothing but basic maintenance tools and a caffeine-induced sense of invincibility. Now, who's going to show me where you're keeping the quantum-entangled coffee beans? As if to emphasize the urgency of the situation, another explosion echoed through the station, and the lights flickered ominously. Sarah could have sworn she saw reality itself ripple in the corner of her eye. 20 minutes to save the station, she said cheerfully. Good thing I've already had my coffee. Quantum coffee. The storage facility housing Station Nexus 99's quantum-entangled coffee beans looked more like a particle physics lab than a pantry. Sarah Chen whistled appreciatively as she took in the arrays of monitoring equipment, containment fields, and what appeared to be a small particle accelerator. "Please tell me you haven't been running coffee beans through that," she said, pointing at the accelerator. Ambassador Lysrix's crystalline form shimmered with what might have been embarrassment. "Only the first batch. We quickly discovered it made the resulting beverage somewhat explosive." "Explosive coffee?" Sarah shook her head. "No wonder you didn't want humans involved. We'd have tried to drink it anyway." The quantum containment systems were failing across the facility, creating shimming distortions in the air that looked like heat waves on a summer day. Each ripple represented a potential tear in the fabric of spacetime, centered on individual coffee beans that had been quantum entangled beyond their structural limits. 15 minutes until total containment failure, Chief Vox announced, his tentacles twitching as he monitored multiple emergency displays. "The Shade Collective's attack has created a cascade effect we can't stop." "Can't stop conventionally," the Proximan delegate ZYX-427 corrected. Their biomechanical exoskeleton hummed as it analyzed the facility's systems. "But perhaps we don't need to stop it, we need to redirect it." The Umbran representative moved like flowing shadow through the facility, examining the equipment. "The quantum entanglement is seeking equilibrium. If we could provide an alternate pathway. We'd need a quantum-capable receiving station," Lysrix pointed out. "One that could handle the entire load of quantum data we've stored in these beans. No such facility exists within range." Sarah, who had been examining the facility's maintenance access panels, looked up with a grin. "Actually, it does. We just need to repurpose it a bit." All alien eyes turned to her. "The station's waste reclamation system," she explained. "It uses quantum filtration to separate and recycle materials at the molecular level. If we can reconfigure it to accept data patterns instead of matter." "That's insane," Chief Vox protested. "The waste reclamation system isn't designed for data processing." "Neither are coffee beans," Sarah countered, already pulling tools from her kit. "But you made that work. The principle is the same, we're just reversing the flow. Instead of using quantum states to store data in organic molecules, we'll use organic molecules to ground excess quantum states." The Umbran's shadowy form rippled with interest. "The mathematics, yes, it could work. But the reconfiguration would require accessing systems across multiple security levels." "Good thing you have a master hacker," Sarah patted the Umbran's insubstantial shoulder, a quantum physics expert. She nodded to Lysrix, a biosystem specialist, a gesture to ZYX-427, and the station's chief of security, all working together. "And a human maintenance engineer who seems to enjoy impossible tasks," Chief Vox added dryly. "Exactly." Sarah was already connecting her tools to the nearest access panel. "Delegate ZYX-427, I need you to interface with the waste reclamation controls. Ambassador Lysrix, start calculating the quantum transfer patterns. Our shadowy friend here can handle the security bypasses, and Chief Vox will try to keep us all from being arrested when this is over." I was going to say, monitor the containment fields, but yeah, that too. They worked with frantic efficiency, racing against both the cascading quantum failure and the Shade Collective forces still trying to breach the facility. Sarah's hands flew over control panels and maintenance interfaces, her earlier caffeine buzz replaced by the familiar focus of a critical repair job. 10 minutes to containment failure, the station's AI announced pleasantly. "The waste reclamation system is responding," ZYX-427 reported. "But the quantum load is higher than anticipated. We need more processing capacity." "The station's entertainment servers," Sarah suggested. "They're quantum capable for handling holographic content." "Chief, can you?" "Already on it." Vox's tentacles danced across multiple control surfaces. Though I question the wisdom of routing potentially reality-breaking quantum data through systems currently playing Attack of the Space Zombies to half the civilian population. 7 minutes to containment failure. The Umbran's shadow stuff briefly solidified into something resembling hands as they worked. Security protocols bypassed. Ambassador, you have full access to the transfer controls. Lysrix's crystalline form blazed with concentrated energy. Beginning quantum data transfer. Ms. Chen, the waste reclamation system is yours. Sarah took a deep breath and began the delicate process of reprogramming the station's most sophisticated garbage disposal into a quantum data sink. As she worked, she could feel reality becoming increasingly unstable around them. Objects flickered in and out of existence, gravity shifted randomly, and at one point she could have sworn she saw herself working on the same panel from 3 different angles simultaneously. 4 minutes to containment failure. Transfer at 60%, Lysrix announced. But the containment fields are degrading faster than predicted. The Shade Collective breached the outer defenses, Vox reported. They'll reach this facility in approximately 3 minutes. Sarah's fingers flew faster across the controls. Almost there. Just need to, there. The waste reclamation system hummed to life, its quantum filters reconfigured to accept pure data instead of matter. Throughout the facility, the shimmering air distortions began to flow like water toward the recycling conduits. Transfer at 80%. 2 minutes to containment failure. Shade Collective forces approaching the main door. Sarah watched the quantum transfer readings climb, 85%, 90, 95. The facility door exploded inward, admitting a squad of shadow-wrapped figures armed with reality-distorting weapons. At the same moment, the last of the quantum distortions flowed into the recycling system, and the transfer readings hit 100%. Quantum containment stabilized, the station AI announced cheerfully. Waste reclamation system operating at optimal efficiency. Would you like to schedule a routine maintenance check? The Shade Collective forces froze, their weapons trained on the group but clearly confused by the lack of reality-breaking quantum coffee beans to steal. Sarah turned to face them, casually leaning against the now-empty storage unit. Sorry, folks. Looks like someone already took out the trash. The perfect brew. In the aftermath of the quantum coffee crisis, Station Nexus 99's main conference room had never seen a more unlikely gathering. Sarah Chen sat at the head of the table, sipping from a fresh cup of non-quantum entangled Colombian dark roast, surrounded by representatives from 5 different species and at least 3 competing intelligence agencies. Admiral Pextor, newly arrived from Sector Command, looked like he was developing a headache. His ceremonial tentacles were tied in what Sarah recognized as the Centaurian equivalent of a stress knot. Let me make sure I understand this correctly, the Admiral said, his translator struggling to convey his tone of disbelief. The Lumini were using my private coffee supply as a quantum data storage medium. The Proximans engineered a coffee shortage to investigate them. The Umbrans tried to steal the quantum-enhanced coffee. The Shade Collective attempted to weaponize it. And a human maintenance engineer from Europa Colony stopped all of you by dumping the quantum data into the station's recycling system. That's a rather simplified version of events, Ambassador Lysrix began, but Sarah cut him off. No, that's pretty much exactly what happened. Though you forgot to mention that your chief of security was investigating everyone the whole time. Chief Vox's tentacles twitched in what might have been pride or embarrassment. And now, the Admiral continued, instead of pressing charges against any of you, you want me to approve a joint research initiative? The quantum transfer protocols we developed have revolutionary potential, Lysrix explained. Ms. Chen's rather unorthodox solution proved that we can store and transfer quantum data through organic matrices more efficiently than any artificial system. And the waste reclamation system's quantum filters, ZYX, for 27 added, demonstrated an entirely new approach to quantum data processing. One that could revolutionize interstellar communications. The Umbran representative, who had introduced themselves as Shadow Architect Val, nodded. Their form rippled with barely contained excitement. The combination of Lumini quantum encoding, Proximate biosystem interfaces, and human improvisation capabilities could advance our technology by decades. Centuries, Lisrix corrected. Especially if we can replicate Ms. Chen's quantum recycling technique on a larger scale. Admiral Pextor turned to Sarah. And what does Europa Colony's most creative maintenance engineer want out of this arrangement? Coffee, Sarah said simply. Real coffee, guaranteed supply, no embargoes, no quantum enhancement, no hidden agendas. Just honest caffeine for honest colonists. That's all. Well, Sarah took another sip from her cup. I wouldn't say no to heading up the engineering team for this joint research initiative. Someone needs to make sure these quantum scientists don't accidentally create any more explosive beverages. The Admiral's tentacles nodded slightly, a sign he was beginning to see the humor in the situation. And the Shade Collective has agreed to provide security consulting, Shadow Architect Val said. After all, who better to prevent quantum data theft than those who specialize in it? Under strict supervision, Chief Vox added quickly. Of course, the Shade Collective representative agreed, their shadow-wrapped form managing to convey amusement. Admiral Pextor was silent for a long moment, his three eyes focusing on each group in turn. Finally, he reached for the coffee pot in the center of the table, regular coffee, Sarah had made sure of that, and poured himself a cup. You realize, he said, that this is possibly the strangest first contact situation in Alliance history. Multiple species, brought together not by diplomacy or crisis, but by a human's desperate need for coffee. To be fair, Sarah pointed out, it was also a crisis. We just solved it with coffee. Sort of. The Alliance was founded on stranger things, Lisrix observed, their crystalline form refracting the conference room's light into complex patterns. And we've achieved something remarkable here, true cooperation between species that normally barely tolerate each other. Over coffee, the Admiral said again, shaking his head in wonder. Over coffee, Sarah agreed, raising her cup in a toast. The universe's most unexpected diplomatic tool. The others raised their own drinks, some coffee, some definitely not, in response. Even the Shade Collective representative managed to materialize something cup-shaped from their shadow stuff. To the Quantum Coffee Initiative, Admiral Pextor declared, making it official. May it bring us better communication, stronger alliances, and... He glanced at Sarah with what might have been a smile, fewer security breaches. No promises on that last one, Sarah grinned. But I'll try to file proper paperwork next time. As the various representatives began discussing logistics and treaties, Sarah leaned back in her chair and took another appreciative sip of her coffee. In a few hours, she'd have to start figuring out how to build the galaxy's first quantum recycling communications network. There would be problems to solve, technologies to integrate, and probably more than a few impossible situations to improvise her way out of. But for now, she had a perfect cup of coffee, a new job that promised to be anything but boring, and the satisfaction of knowing that her little heist had accidentally launched a new era of interstellar cooperation. Not bad for a maintenance engineer who just wanted a decent cup of coffee. In the station's waste reclamation system, quantum data continued to flow through repurposed filters, carrying messages between stars. And in the conference room's coffee pot, normal, non-quantum enhanced Colombian dark roast stayed exactly what it was supposed to be, just really good coffee. Some things, after all, were perfect exactly as they were.